In this session, we will look at the features of a disability buy-sell agreement for business owners. As discussed in other sessions, there are certain categories of risks that business owners face, and we want to focus at this time on the disability of a business owner, which may trigger the need to sell that business. And so we will talk about disability buy-sell agreements and the fact that these can be established up front, and also one can purchase a specific type of disability income policy that can be used to fund the buyout of a business in the event that one of the shareholders or one of the principals in that business become disabled. So let's take a look at the concept of a disability buy-sell agreement and disability buyout insurance. So, on the disability of a business owner, there are an awful lot of concerns that are appropriate to the business. Now, this is not true only on the disability of the owner, but certainly these similar concerns arise on the death of a business owner or even potentially the critical illness of a business owner. So they're always around these three issues. There are always concerns around what will happen to the business. Can the family continue to operate the business? Do the family have the skill set to do that? Does the family want to continue the business? And so, in many situations where that business is usually the most significant asset in the family of a small business owner, if the owner is disabled or dies, how can we convert their equity in that business into liquid cash so that the family can continue to live and maintain their lifestyle, and maybe someone else would be able to carry on the business? So business concerns on death, disability, or critical illness are significant to a business owner. And even if we were to be able to continue that business, a lot of the employees, if something happens to one of the principals of the business, employees become concerned about their jobs. Is the business going to survive? Am I going to have a job in the future? Maybe things are uncertain, and so some of your employees, and especially maybe some of your key employees, may be thinking about leaving the company and joining another organization. So retaining those key employees is a key point when looking at the ongoing profitable and successful continuity of a business. Now, in addition to that, if you have one or more owner, and let's say one of the owners becomes disabled, will the remaining co-owners support a non-productive disabled owner? And if they may do that for a short period, so they understand the issue, they are willing to take over the role of that individual in the short term. But if this disability extends beyond a longer period, then some key discussions have to be made, and the co-owners may not be willing to continue to support the disabled partner over the longer term. And so, how would, for example, how would the co-owner feel if suddenly one of the children or one of the spouse of the disabled partner has to now become more involved in the business? How do the co-owners feel about the family members joining into that business? So there are a lot of issues, critical issues, that arise in the event of the death, disability, or critical illness of a business owner. Now, it's always important that these issues should be discussed in advance, and there should be a plan in place in the event something like this occurs. So, unfortunately, in the real world, there are a lot of situations where these things are left undiscussed by the business owners, and they run into significant problems if a well thought out plan is not in place. So, one of the solutions to this issue is the situation where the owners can in fact enter into a formal binding agreement. And this type of an agreement documents exactly what is to happen if one of the owners becomes disabled or dies, and it documents exactly what's going to happen to that owner's portion of the business. Is it to be sold? If it is to be sold, who is going to be buying it? If they are going to be buying it, how much are they going to be paying? And in addition to that, where are they going to get the money to make the purchase? So all of these kinds of criteria are usually documented in a formal binding agreement. In that agreement, the price in terms of how we're going to calculate the value of the business, there's a formula in that agreement, and the conditions of the purchase are in that agreement. What's also important in that agreement is that the parties to that agreement are obligated. So one party is obligated to sell if they become disabled, because we're talking about disability insurance in this segment. But obviously, if we're talking about death under a life insurance arrangement, we also would want this to be an obligation. So the survivors, if it's a death situation, the surviving shareholders are obligated to buy the shares of the deceased owner, and the deceased owner's estate, they're obligated to sell. So there is always this obligation in place on both parties. In our discussion today, because we're focusing on disability, we're saying here the parties are obligated to buy and sell in the event of the disability of one of the parties to that agreement. As I alluded to, many agreements will cover not only disability, but they'll include death and critical illness, and they will have insurance in place to cover the death scenario. So the agreement will be funded by a life insurance policy in the event of death. The agreement will be funded by a disability policy in the event of disability, and can also be funded by a critical illness policy if they want to cover that scenario. Now, back to disability policies and death policies. There are two types of ways you can set up the ownership. We can have a crisscross situation where, business owner A will own a policy on the life of business owner B, and business owner B will own a policy on the life of business owner A. This is the crisscross method, so the insurance is actually owned by the co-owners personally. They own it on each other's lives. The other option is the share redemption structure, wherein we get the incorporated business to own the policies on each of the, let's say we had two partners, they'd own the policy on each of the business partner. In the event of a claim, the money would be paid to the incorporated business, and the incorporated business would redeem the shares of that deceased or that disabled partner, and then the surviving partner would then become the owner of the business. So there's much more discussion about crisscross and share redemption formats for these types of agreements under the life insurance module. You can refer to these if you have forgotten about them or you want to find out some more detail on these types of ownership structures. So the features of the disability buyout insurance that would fund this agreement really would be specified that under the agreement that they must have disability insurance in place to fund the obligation of either party. These disability buyout insurance plans tend to have a regular occupation definition of disability. Usually it says you are unable to perform your regular duties within the business and you're not engaged in any other occupation inside or outside of the business. So this tends to be the standard definition under the regular occupation disability definition. Now, for some professional practices, these are businesses. You could have a dental clinic. You might have a medical clinic where it's owned by a number of medical practitioners or doctors. So for these sort of professional practices, some insurance companies will sell you the disability policy with an own occupation definition. Now, these plans are conditionally renewable and non-cancelable, so they're going to be renewed each year, but there may be some changes to the premium on the policy, but for an entire class of risk that's involved. They tend to have a waiting period that's usually longer than we would see on other individual disability plans. These tend to be 12 to 24 month waiting periods. And one of the reasons for that is that what's different with disability buyout insurance is, unlike regular disability insurance where you get a monthly benefit paid to the individual during their disability, the issue with a buy-sell agreement is that once one party decides to buy out the other party, it's usually better for them to make the payment in a lump sum. And so disability buyout insurance, in fact, the benefits paid comes in a lump sum payment. So it's a one lump sum payment after the waiting period. So essentially what happens on these types of programs, you basically are giving the disabled individual up to about a year, up to about 12 months to see if they can be rehabilitated and get back to contributing on a normal basis. So there tends to be this extended waiting period. If after 12 months there is no improvement and it doesn't look like the individual is going to recover fully, that may trigger the obligation under the buy-sell agreement. And at that point in time, once that purchase is triggered, the lump sum payment from the disability buyout insurance plan is made to the purchaser, and they'll use that money to complete the purchase. So in that situation, technically, the benefit period is simply 1 day because you're receiving a lump sum check. So different than our traditional individual disability and group type of disability plans, in that the waiting period can be longer, 12 to 24 months. The benefit period is simply 1 day because there is going to be a lump sum payment made on this plan. Maximum coverage, usually $1 million to $2 million is the total lump sum risk that insurance companies would be willing to take for these types of disability buyout plans. So again, take a look at Table 5.1, where there is a good summary of all of the risks that businesses can face and the different types of insurance policies that are designed specifically to address those risks.